The biting wind screamed through the avenues of New York City as 7-year-old Lily Walker hugged her frail arms close, trembling in the worn sweater that offered little protection against the relentless chill. The bustling streets were filled with a crowd, yet the small girl with her tangled brown hair and weary eyes went unnoticed by all. She wandered without purpose for hours, her stomach rumbling in discontent. Yet she had become accustomed to the pangs of hunger. It had been her quiet confidant for as long as her memory stretched. Since the passing of dear Mrs. Jenkins, the gentle soul who had welcomed her, Lily found herself in solitude. She was completely unaware of the identities of her biological parents, and she held no recollections of them whatsoever. The only existence she had ever experienced was one of endurance, seeking out cozy corners to rest and yearning for remnants of food discarded by passers-by. That night, the chill was relentless. The streets started to clear as individuals hurried to their abodes, fleeing the biting wind that sliced through the city with a sharp intensity. Lily's small fingers felt frozen as she rubbed them together, urgently seeking to generate some warmth. She noticed an inviting subway entrance and chose to step inside. The underground station offered a fleeting refuge from the harshness of the night, a sanctuary where the biting wind could not touch her. She descended the steps, her feet weary from a day of walking, and arrived at the bustling platform. She lingered at the brink, her gaze fixed on the shimmering lights of a train drawing near through the darkened tunnel. As the train halted, she entered, her breath escaping in wisps against the chill of the air. The train buzzed with a diverse crowd. Sharp-suited businessmen deep in thought, weary workers returning from their long day, and a handful of tourists navigating their way with maps in hand. Lily stealthily approached an unoccupied chair in the corner, but just as she was about to take a seat, her gaze fell upon a solitary man by the window. There was an unmistakable quality about him that set him apart from the rest. His presence was commanding, but a hint of melancholy lingered in his gaze as he watched the city lights blur by outside the window. His defined features, meticulously styled dark hair, and tailored suit signified his connection to a realm of affluence and influence. He was Alexander Carter, a name that meant nothing to Lily. Fatigue pressed down on her small frame. She paused briefly, then settled next to him, curling into the seat. The cozy embrace of the subway car enveloped her, akin to a gentle blanket, and soon enough, her weary eyelids began to close. Her head, too fatigued to remain upright, softly leaned against Alexander's shoulder. The billionaire tensed, taken aback by the sudden touch. He tilted his head gently, glancing down at the small child who had drifted off to sleep beside him. Her expression was serene, her breaths measured and calm. She appeared so delicate, so vulnerable. A fleeting memory flickered in his mind. His late wife cradling their newborn daughter. A daughter he had lost on the very same day he lost his wife. His heart tightened at the thought. From humble beginnings, Alexander forged an empire, establishing one of the nation's most prosperous investment firms. He possessed an extraordinary level of power, influence, and wealth that surpassed all expectations. Still, nothing had ever managed to fill the void within him. For years, he immersed himself in his work, believing that wealth could fill the void left by the one thing he would never reclaim. Yet, as he gazed at the young girl next to him, an unusual sensation began to awaken inside him. She possessed an essence that resonated deeply within him, awakening echoes of a long-buried memory. The train swayed softly, gliding through the darkened tunnels with a rhythmic grace. Lily, lost in her dreams, stirred gently, her delicate fingers clutching the fabric of his coat, instinctively searching for solace. Alexander let out a breath, his rigid stance easing just a bit. He lacked the resolve to disturb her. The station announcements echoed around him, yet he stayed in his seat, keeping a watchful eye on the child who had unwittingly turned to a stranger for comfort. As the train rolled into its final stop, the conductor's voice echoed through the speakers, revealing the last destination. Lily stirred, her eyelids fluttering as she became aware of her unintended slumber. Her eyes grew large as she took in her surroundings, still on the train, leaning against a stranger. She sprang upright, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks, tinged with a hint of fear. Alexander observed her abrupt distress and addressed her softly, his tone steady and comforting. "It's fine," he remarked. Fatigue had settled in. Lily gazed at him, her mind swirling with uncertainty about how to reply. Many overlooked her, acting as if she were invisible. Yet this man, an unfamiliar face, appeared unfazed by her being there. He neither pushed her away nor raised his voice at her. Rather, there was a warmth in his tone, an element she found unfamiliar. "Do you feel disoriented?" he inquired. Lily gently shook her head, a slow and deliberate motion. "I have nowhere to go," she confessed softly. Alexander observed her intently, his thoughts swirling with intensity. Every child deserves to be safe and cared for, particularly those who are still so young. He had witnessed numerous instances of neglect, contributed millions to organizations aiding the homeless, yet he had never directly come across a child in such a predicament. He cast a quick look at his watch. It was almost midnight. It was simply out of the question to leave her by herself at this moment. "Have you had a chance to enjoy a meal?" he inquired. Lily paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes before she finally shook her head. Hunger clawed at her insides, yet she had come to understand that kindness from strangers was a rare commodity. With a heavy sigh, Alexander rose to his feet, straightening his coat with a deliberate motion. "Let's go," he said, gesturing toward the train doors. "Allow me to procure a delightful meal for you." Lily paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She had received cautionary tales about placing her faith in unknown faces, yet there was an undeniable quality about this man that set him apart. He didn't strike me as the type who would cause her any harm. The hunger was simply unbearable. After a fleeting hesitation, she gradually rose to her feet and trailed behind him. As they emerged from the station, they found themselves on the serene streets of Manhattan. The vibrant city pulsated with its signature flashing lights and the distant hum of traffic, embodying its restless spirit. Alexander guided her to a charming diner close by, a snug spot that remained open. They settled into a booth by the window, and Lily gazed in amazement as he placed an order for a complete meal on her behalf, a luxury she hadn't experienced in quite some time. When the food was placed before her, Lily paused, gazing at the steaming plate awaiting her attention. Alexander observed her uncertainty and offered a warm smile. "Proceed," he instructed. "It belongs to you." She grasped the fork and savored a delicate bite. The flavor was intense, comforting, luxurious, delightful. Before she realized it, she was devouring her food with abandon, completely disregarding her etiquette. Alexander observed quietly, a weight of unexpressed feelings pressing down on him. That evening, a shift occurred. Unbeknownst to them, destiny had intertwined their paths for a purpose. One was a wandering child in search of comfort, while the other was a fractured man who had inadvertently discovered the fragment of his spirit he had long been yearning for. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. The soft illumination of the diner lights danced upon the glass windows as Lily nestled in the corner booth, relishing each morsel of the meal laid before her. The meal was a revelation, a burst of freshness and warmth that enveloped her senses, igniting a delightful symphony of flavors that brought comfort to her stomach after days of emptiness. Opposite her, Alexander Carter observed quietly, his fingers gently encircling a steaming cup of dark coffee. He found himself questioning the reasons behind bringing her here and the peculiar sense of duty he felt toward her. Yet, an instinctive voice within urged him to recognize the significance of this moment. Lily, though her stomach rumbled with hunger, took her time with each bite, casting furtive looks at the man seated opposite her. He stood apart from everyone she had met previously. He regarded her without a trace of pity, nor did he attempt to dismiss her. His eyes held a distant quality, suggesting he was adrift in unspoken thoughts. The gentle murmur of chatter from the other late-night patrons surrounded them, yet for a brief moment, it seemed as though they were the sole inhabitants of the universe. Once she completed her meal, Lily dabbed her mouth with the napkin, a sudden realization dawning on her that she had consumed more than her typical daily intake. She paused, contemplating whether to voice her thoughts or remain silent. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice a gentle whisper. Alexander glanced upward, taken aback by the warmth of appreciation reflected in her gaze. He merely nodded, at a loss for words. In reality, he had never viewed himself as a compassionate individual. He constructed his dominion through merciless choices, severing ties with anything that could undermine his strength. As he sat across from the little girl, who had neither a home nor anyone to care for her, he sensed a deep emotion awaken within him. "Where do you rest your head at night?" he inquired, his tone even, yet his heart tightened at the mere idea of her solitude in the frigid city. Lily nonchalantly shrugged, her fingers idly toying with the hem of her oversized sweater, occasionally beneath the bridge close to Central Park. "At times, I discover a cozy nook within the subway station." She uttered it with such nonchalance, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Yet Alexander was aware of the truth. The streets posed a perilous threat, particularly for a young one. He had witnessed tales in the headlines, children vanishing and falling prey to a merciless world that showed no compassion for the vulnerable. He found it impossible to allow that fate to befall her. He let out a breath, placing his coffee cup on the table. He stated with conviction, "You can no longer sleep on the streets." Lily's eyes grew wide, her body tensing up. She had encountered assurances in the past, individuals pledging support only to vanish when it became troublesome for them. "Why does it matter to you?" she inquired, her tone wary. The question was not without merit. Never before had anyone shown such concern. Alexander found himself at a loss for words. He might have claimed it was due to his unwillingness to witness a child's pain. He might have crafted a plausible rationale. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an undeniable sense of familiarity about her. He finally confessed that "you bring someone to mind." He questioned whether it was the appropriate thing to express, yet it remained the undeniable truth. Lily tilted her head, a spark of curiosity dancing in her weary eyes. "Who is it?" Alexander paused, contemplating his response. "My daughter," he murmured, his voice softer than it had been. Years had passed since he last uttered those words. The image of his departed wife cradling their baby girl surged in his thoughts, her gaze directed at him, brimming with affection and optimism. But that hope had perished the day she left, and with her, their child had vanished as well. At least that was what he believed. Lily's brow furrowed, her expression reflecting a struggle to grasp the meaning behind his words. "Where is she?" she inquired. The inquiry pierced him deeply, as if a blade had been thrust into his heart. He compelled himself to push down the knot in his throat. "She passed away ages ago," he remarked, his tone devoid of feeling. It was the sole method he understood to articulate it without shattering. Lily cast her gaze downward, as though grappling with the weight of his suffering. She understood the pain of loss, despite never having truly known her own parents. Throughout her life, she had experienced the sharp ache of solitude. A hush enveloped them, dense yet strangely reassuring. In that moment, Alexander resolved to take a step that he understood would alter the course of their lives forever. "For the time being, you can remain with me," he stated. It was not a question. It was a declaration. Lily's head jerked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What?" she inquired, as though she had not quite caught his words. Alexander reclined in his chair, his face a mask of inscrutability. "A guest room is available in my home. You may remain there while we work on a solution." Lily found herself grappling with the question of whether he was worthy of her trust. He turned out to be an unfamiliar face indeed. Yet there was an undeniable sincerity in his voice that suggested he spoke the truth. He wasn't providing mere charity. He was presenting something genuine. She took a deep breath, her fingers clenching the edge of the table. "All right," she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander gave a slight nod, as though that resolved the matter entirely. He retrieved his wallet, ensuring there was sufficient cash left on the table to settle the bill, and then rose to his feet. "Let us proceed," he remarked. Lily paused briefly, then stepped out of the diner and into the refreshing night air. The avenues of New York had settled into a hush, the neon glow shimmering on the slick pavement. They moved quietly, with the only noise being the faint buzz of the city in the background. A sleek black luxury car stood elegantly by the curb, and Alexander motioned for her to enter. She paused, gazing at him, seeking any hint of dishonesty. Yet his expression stayed serene, composed. With a deep breath, she settled into the car, the plush leather seats embracing her as she did. The warmth enveloped me, the air infused with an unfamiliar scent, one that hinted at luxury. As they navigated the city streets, Lily gazed out the window, her eyes following the shimmering lights that danced by in a blur. She had never experienced a vehicle quite like this, feeling both out of her element and oddly secure. Alexander, however, caught himself stealing glances at her in the rearview mirror. Something about her tugged at his heartstrings in an unexpected manner. It was an unusual sensation, one he wasn't certain he was prepared to confront. Upon entering his penthouse, Lily's eyes grew wide at the astonishing expanse before her. The gleaming floors, the majestic staircase, the expansive windows framing the cityscape. It was a realm far removed from the life she had known. Alexander guided her to a guest room, a space more expansive than any she had ever known as home. "You can rest here," he said. "In the closet you will find neatly arranged clean clothes. If you require any assistance, feel free to reach out." Lily nodded, her mind still swirling with emotions. She had never experienced the luxury of a room before. "I've always slept on nothing more than a piece of cardboard or a frigid bench." As Alexander began to walk away, she called out to him. Once more, she expressed her gratitude. He lingered in the doorway, casting a glance back at her. For a brief instant, a sensation gripped his chest. He gave a brief nod before shutting the door softly behind him. That night, Lily reclined in the most luxurious bed she had ever experienced, gazing at the ceiling, contemplating whether this was merely a figment of her imagination. In his room, Alexander perched on the edge of his bed, gazing at the faded photograph of his wife and daughter, a whisper of a long-buried memory stirring within him. Neither of them could foresee what the next day would unveil, yet one truth stood clear. Everything had transformed. The gentle morning light poured through the expansive windows of the penthouse, illuminating the elegant furnishings and polished marble floors with a cozy radiance. Lily shifted in the grand bed, the plushness of the pillows feeling strange against her skin. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, as the events of the previous night flooded back to her mind. She found herself in an unexpected realm, distant from the frigid streets, the gnawing hunger, and the relentless struggle for existence. The room was infused with a refreshing aroma, reminiscent of freshly laundered linen mingled with a subtle floral note, elusive and unidentifiable. For a few moments, she remained still, fearing that any movement would shatter the fragile reality around her, sending her back to the harshness of waking beneath the bridge, trembling in the chill of dawn. In the living room, Alexander occupied his familiar spot, a cup of black coffee cradled in his hand, gazing out at the city skyline. He had spent countless hours adrift in thoughts he wasn't prepared to face. Lily, the girl in the other room, remained an enigma to him, yet he had welcomed her into his home without hesitation. That was out of character for him. He was not the kind of person who allowed feelings to influence his choices. He constructed his existence upon reason, planning, and an unwavering pursuit of achievement. Yet there was an undeniable allure about her that tugged at his heartstrings like nothing else had in a long time. She brought back memories of a time he wished to leave behind. A gentle noise caught his attention, prompting him to turn his head. Lily lingered in the hallway, uncertainty etched on her face, her oversized sweater draping casually over her petite figure. Her eyes, wide and filled with uncertainty, flitted around the space as if seeking to grasp the reality of her surroundings. Alexander took a moment to clear his throat. "Did you rest peacefully?" he inquired, his voice unwavering. Lily nodded slowly, her fingers clutching the edge of her sleeves. Indeed, she whispered. Being in a home of such grandeur felt surreal, as if I had stepped into a dream. You must be hungry, Alexander remarked, rising to his feet. Come, allow me to prepare a meal for you. The kitchen was a realm of wonder, unlike anything Lily had ever encountered. Stylish, contemporary, featuring cutting-edge appliances that appeared pristine. Alexander glided through the kitchen, retrieving ingredients from the fridge with ease. In just a few moments, he set down a plate of fluffy scrambled eggs, golden toast, and vibrant fresh fruit before her. She gazed at the food with uncertainty. There's no need for fear, he said, his gaze fixed on her. Consume. She lifted the fork, savoring a delicate morsel. The flavor was uncomplicated, yet it brought a sense of warmth and solace. As she ate, she sensed Alexander's eyes on her, observing her intently as if he were piecing together a puzzle. For how long have you been independent? He inquired. Lily paused, savoring each bite with deliberate slowness. She confessed it had been a few years. From a young age. She was uncertain of her precise age, yet she was acutely aware that solitude had been her companion for as long as her memory stretched. She possessed no recollections of a cozy home, no visions of caregivers gently placing her into bed. Just the pavement beneath my feet, the gnawing emptiness, and the biting chill. Alexander's hold on his coffee cup grew more intense. With each word she uttered, a disquieting sensation swelled within him. Years were devoted to constructing his empire, driven by the pursuit of wealth and power, all the while neglecting the memory of the child he had lost ages ago. Yet, as he found himself seated opposite this girl, a profound realization stirred within him, revealing a truth he was unprepared to confront. As breakfast concluded, Lily dabbed her mouth and raised her gaze. What motivates you to assist me? She inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. A question that had been echoing in her thoughts since the previous night. Assistance was rarely offered without some underlying motive. Alexander locked eyes with her, his face a mask of mystery. Ultimately, he was the one to voice it. It wasn't the complete truth, but it sufficed for the moment. The remainder of the morning unfolded in serene intervals. Lily gazed in wonder at the breathtaking view from the expansive windows. She glided her fingers along the sleek bookshelves, her gaze drifting over the titles that eluded her comprehension. It was a realm so unlike her own that it seemed as if she had entered a dream. Later that afternoon, Alexander got a call from his assistant, letting him know about an urgent business meeting. He paused for a moment, then stole a glance at Lily, who lounged on the couch, idly flipping through a magazine that seemed to elude her comprehension. He found himself torn, uncertain about whether to abandon her to solitude, yet the decision felt inevitable. I need to step out for a bit, he remarked. Are you going to be all right here? Lily nodded, yet a subtle unease lingered within her. She found herself unaccustomed to the confines of such a place, especially when left to her own devices within it. There's food in the fridge, Alexander remarked. If you require anything, I shall return shortly. Once he departed, the stillness in the penthouse became almost suffocating. Lily meandered through the rooms, her fingers grazing the plush cushions, her gaze fixed on the enormous television. As she strolled along the expansive hallways, everything felt excessively flawless, almost surreal. She stood in Alexander's study, her fingers gliding across the surface of the desk. Documents were organized in tidy piles, while a laptop remained open yet secured. Yet, it was the framed photograph that seized her focus. A woman with kind eyes beamed in the photograph, cradling a baby snugly wrapped in a delicate pink blanket. Lily gazed at it, a sensation awakening within her heart. She had never witnessed Alexander express any feeling towards anyone, but with this woman, there was an unmistakable difference in the way he stood next to her in the photograph. With great care, she lifted the frame, her gaze fixed on the baby within. There was an uncanny familiarity to the tiny face. A shiver coursed down her spine. The sudden noise of the elevator caught her off guard, prompting her to swiftly return the photo to its previous spot. Alexander entered, his tie loosened, a look of fatigue etched across his face. He paused momentarily upon seeing her in his study, yet remained silent. Lily took a deep breath. "Who is she?" she inquired, gesturing toward the photo. Alexander's demeanor grew somber. "My wife," he said, his voice trailing off. Lily nibbled on her lip. "What about the baby?" For the first time, she glimpsed a raw emotion in his eyes, a depth he had concealed for years. "My daughter," he murmured softly. "She passed away quite some time ago." Lily's heart raced with intensity. She glanced back at the picture, her fingers gripping the edge of her sweater tightly. She felt the urge to inquire further, yet an instinct whispered that the moment wasn't right. Instead, she merely nodded and stepped away. As she reclined in the grand bed that night, her thoughts surged with intensity. A lingering quality in that picture clung to her mind. The familiarity of the baby's tiny face was striking. His gaze lingered on her, as though he were on a quest for something elusive. And deep within her, an unsettling and fearsome idea started to take shape, one she hesitated to voice. Before moving on, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like. The night dragged on, and Lily lay restless in the large bed, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and discomfort. The image of the baby in the picture lingered in her mind, awakening a profound emotion within her that she struggled to articulate. The manner in which Alexander spoke of his daughter, his dearly departed daughter, sent an unsettling chill through her. Is it conceivable? No, she told herself, shaking her head. It was merely a happenstance. She couldn't possibly be linked to him in that manner. Still, a quiet voice within urged her to seek deeper understanding. The following morning, she stirred awake to the gentle aroma of breakfast wafting through the penthouse. She paused at the threshold of the bedroom, uncertainty gripping her as she questioned her place in this moment. Upon entering the kitchen, she found Alexander already present, pouring coffee into a cup, his expression a mystery. "Morning," he muttered, his gaze fixed elsewhere. Lily nodded as she settled into a chair. A plate of pancakes and fruit awaited her, as though he had anticipated her hunger. She grasped her fork, pausing momentarily before bringing it to her lips. "Regarding the events of last night," she began, her voice scarcely audible. Alexander let out a breath, placing his cup on the table. He sensed the questions brewing, already anticipating the direction this dialogue would take. Lily gave a slight nod. It seems familiar, as if I've encountered that little one previously." She found herself at a loss for understanding why those words had escaped her lips. Yet once they were spoken, there was no way to retract them. Alexander's eyes narrowed with intensity. "Could you clarify what you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I'm not sure," she confessed. There was an undeniable sense of familiarity about her. "It feels familiar, as if I've encountered that face in the past." Alexander held his silence, his grip on the coffee cup growing firmer. For years, he had buried the anguish of losing his daughter deep within himself. He remained silent about her, never permitting himself to linger on what had been lost to him. Yet here he was, facing this girl who seemed to have materialized from thin air, and an undeniable feeling began to awaken within him. "Lily," he inquired gently, "what recollections do you have of your past?" Lily gazed at her plate, idly maneuvering a piece of pancake with her fork. She confessed there wasn't much. "I found myself on my own at a very young age. I have no recollection of my parents. I'm not even sure if I possessed any." Alexander felt a constriction in his chest. He felt an inexplicable pull, as if his intuition whispered that there was a deeper truth lurking beneath the surface. He had always been under the impression that his daughter had passed away as an infant. That was the story he had been given. But what if that wasn't the reality? The idea sent a thrill through him, igniting a pulse he hadn't experienced in ages. He rose suddenly, the chair grating harshly against the floor. "I need to check something," he murmured, making his way to his office. Lily remained still for a heartbeat, her mind a whirlwind of curiosity and trepidation as she finally chose to follow him. Within the confines of the office, Alexander slid open a secured drawer in his desk, retrieving an aged folder. The pages within showed signs of wear, suggesting they had been perused countless times prior. He swiftly turned the pages until he discovered what he sought, a birth certificate. His hands quivered ever so slightly as he perused the name inscribed there. Lily glanced over his shoulder, her heart pounding with anticipation. "What is that?" she inquired. With a moment of uncertainty, Alexander shifted the document in her direction. "This is my daughter's birth certificate," he said, his voice heavy with feeling. Lillian was her name. Lily gazed at the name, her breath momentarily halting in her throat. Lillian. It wasn't merely reminiscent of her name. It was her name itself. Her stomach plummeted, and a chill swept through her hands. "Lillian?" she murmured, the name lingering on her tongue, both known and strange all at once. Alexander observed her response intently. "Lily," he spoke with a measured tone, what if you are indeed my daughter?" The words coursed through her, sending a chill down her spine. "No," she replied swiftly, shaking her head. "That simply can't be done. It just doesn't add up, does it?" Yet her voice trembled, revealing the uncertainty that was seeping into her soul. Alexander inhaled deeply. "There is but a single path to certainty," he remarked. "A genetic analysis." Lily took a deep breath. The thought of uncovering the truth filled her with dread. What if she truly was his daughter? What if all the truths she believed about herself were nothing but fabrications? Yet, a different aspect of her, one that had devoted years to seeking answers, yearned to understand. She locked eyes with him and gave a slow nod. "Very well," she murmured. "Let's get started." The remainder of the day slipped by in a haze. Alexander organized a DNA test, his typical efficiency surfacing, even as a whirlwind of emotions he had long suppressed began to stir within him. He had always believed that his daughter was gone to him for good. However, if Lily was indeed Lillian, it would alter the entire situation. Lily, in contrast, was unable to cease her trembling. She paced around, her thoughts racing uncontrollably. What if she truly had a family? What if she had spent all those years on the streets while her father, a millionaire, enjoyed everything she had always longed for? The concept was daunting. That evening, as they lingered in quiet anticipation, awaiting the test results that would arrive in the coming days, Lily finally broke the silence. "If I were to be your daughter, what would unfold next?" Alexander gazed at her, his face a mask of mystery. "Then you remain here," he stated with conviction, "alongside me, where you are meant to be." Lily felt a constriction in her throat. She felt uncertain about whether she was prepared for that. Having been solitary for such an extended period, the notion of finding a place to belong seemed utterly unfamiliar. Yet, beneath the surface, she was aware of her true desire. Above all else, she yearned to feel that she belonged somewhere. As darkness enveloped New York City, silence reigned between them, yet the atmosphere was charged with feelings left unsaid. The truth was approaching, and regardless of the outcomes, their lives would be irrevocably altered. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. The days preceding the DNA test results stretched on interminably for Lily. Each moment stretched on endlessly, and every look Alexander cast her way brimmed with unspoken inquiries. She attempted to maintain a facade of normalcy, but how was that even possible? Her whole life teetered on the edge of uncertainty. She had never permitted herself to envision something like this, that she might truly have a family, that she wasn't merely another overlooked spirit wandering the streets of New York. Yet, concurrently, the prospect filled her with dread. What if the findings revealed that she wasn't his daughter? What if she had permitted herself to expect nothing at all? After years of relying solely on her own resilience, she was finally allowing herself to embrace the hope of depending on another. The idea stirred a sense of discomfort within her. Alexander was just as restless, though he concealed it more effectively. After years of believing his daughter was lost to him, He found himself grappling with the overwhelming notion that she could be right there, just within reach. With each glance at Lily, he sought remnants of the child he had mourned. The contour of her nose, the manner in which she nibbled her lip when anxious, the gentle tapping of her fingers on the table while deep in thought, all resonated with a sense of familiarity that tugged at his heart. He was reluctant to voice it, yet deep down he was already aware. He sensed it. He was aware that she was his daughter. Yet he understood that mere emotion was insufficient. He required evidence, and until that moment arrived, he had to exercise vigilance. The results were set to come in that evening, and the burden of expectation was overwhelming. Lily wandered restlessly through the penthouse, her mind a whirlwind, unable to settle on a single thought. She attempted to immerse herself in television, leafed through various books, and even gazed at the New York skyline, yet nothing seemed to alleviate her restlessness. Whenever her thoughts drifted, they inevitably gravitated towards the potential implications of the outcomes. At last, she reached her breaking point. She discovered Alexander in his office, his expression tight as he focused intently on his laptop screen. "I can't do this," she exclaimed, causing him to glance up. He let out a deep breath, his fingers tangling in his hair. He acknowledged it, "I know. However, it is necessary for us to proceed." "What if it's an error?" she murmured. "What if this is merely an absurd twist of fate?" Alexander reclined in his chair, observing her intently. "What if it isn't?" His voice was soft, yet it carried a weight that made Lily's heart constrict. Just as she was about to reply, his phone vibrated on the desk. They both stood still. The findings. With a brief pause, Alexander reached for the phone. His expression remained a mystery as he perused the message, his eyes gliding over the words repeatedly, as if seeking clarity within them. Lily's fists tightened, her heart racing with such intensity that she feared it might burst from her chest. With a measured motion, Alexander placed the phone aside and turned his gaze toward her. His eyes brimmed with an intensity that was both primal and all-consuming. "It's you," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Lily, you are my beloved daughter." Time appeared to freeze. Lily experienced a suffocating sensation. Her thoughts wrestled with the words, striving to unravel their meaning. For countless years, she had wandered in solitude, convinced that she was utterly alone, merely another forgotten girl adrift in the vastness of the world. And now, in a single moment, everything had transformed. She possessed a father, a genuine, vibrant father who had been on a quest for her, even without realizing it. Tears filled her eyes, yet she remained unaware of her silent weeping until Alexander rose and cautiously approached her. "Lily," he murmured, his voice heavy with feeling. "I'm at a loss for words. I believed you had left. I believed I had lost you for all time." Lily shook her head, her thoughts tangled and silent. She had devoted years to constructing barriers around her, shielding herself from the light of hope and the shadows of disappointment. Yet now everything was falling apart. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she experienced a sensation she had long denied herself. Safety. Without hesitation, she ventured a tentative step forward, followed by another, her movements unsteady. In an instant, she found herself enveloped in his embrace, holding onto him tightly as waves of sobs shook her frame. Alexander embraced her firmly, his tears flowing quietly yet carrying immense weight. For years, he had concealed his sorrow, compelling himself to forge ahead. Yet, as he stood there cradling his daughter, he allowed himself to embrace every emotion. The sorrow, the ache, the release, the boundless affection that remained ever present. Apologies slipped from his lips, soft and tender, as he nestled close to her, his breath warm against her hair. "I wish I had discovered you earlier. I ought to have." "You had no idea," Lily gasped, shaking her head. "You believed I had disappeared. I was unaware as well." They remained in that position for what seemed like an eternity, both reluctant to release their grip. Outside, the world buzzed with the sounds of honking cars and bustling pedestrians navigating the vibrant streets of New York. Yet within these four walls, time seemed to stand still. Eventually, Alexander drew back just a bit, enough to meet her gaze. "You're no longer by yourself," he stated with conviction. "You will never have to face solitude again." Lily dabbed at her eyes, giving a small nod. She was completely unaware of what lay ahead, of the implications this new reality had for her. Yet, for the first time in ages, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She possessed a place to call her own now, a dad, a household, and perhaps, just perhaps, that was everything she had ever desired. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, like our content, and share it with your friends. The days that came after the DNA results seemed to unfold like a surreal dream for Lily. Having navigated life on her own for so long, the notion of suddenly finding a place to belong seemed utterly alien to her. Alexander promptly insisted she remain in the penthouse, adamantly refusing to allow her to return to the streets. Initially, she pushed back. She found it difficult to accept assistance, and the thought of unexpectedly having a father, a home, and a life of ease was daunting. Yet Alexander exhibited remarkable patience. He allowed her the freedom she required, yet always ensured she felt his presence beside her. Gradually, she began to find her place. The first morning she awoke in a cozy, inviting bed, a bed that was truly hers. She was not curled up beneath a flimsy blanket on a park bench, nor was she fretting about the source of her next meal. Instead, she found herself in a room with a window that framed a view of Central Park, while breakfast awaited her downstairs. It was an indulgence she doubted she would ever fully embrace. Alexander put forth every effort to simplify matters for her. He held back, refraining from bombarding her with inquiries about her history. He effortlessly conveyed to her that she was truly welcome. He accompanied her on a shopping trip for clothes, assisted her in establishing a bank account, and even engaged a tutor to aid her in catching up on the education she had missed. Initially, she pushed back against the changes. Having spent an eternity in solitude, the idea of depending on another seemed foreign to her. However, as time went on, she began to realize that Alexander's intentions were not solely about offering her assistance. He sought to reclaim the time that had slipped away from them, and in spite of it all, in spite of the fortress she had constructed around her heart, she discovered a yearning to allow him entry. One afternoon, they embarked on a drive to Brooklyn, a place where Alexander had once called home many years prior. As they navigated the streets, he shared tales from his past, recounting how he had built his business from the ground up, detailing the hardships he faced before ultimately achieving success. It felt unusual to view him as anything beyond the formidable millionaire she recognized today, yet learning about his challenges rendered him more relatable, authentic. "I wasn't always like this," he confessed, stealing a glance at her. "Once, I found myself struggling to scrape together enough cash just to cover my rent. I once found myself on these very streets, pondering how I would find my way forward." Lily gazed through the window, observing the passers-by, each immersed in their own distinct reality. "I suppose we aren't as dissimilar as we thought," she whispered. Alexander beamed. "I suppose that's not the case." That evening, as they lounged in the penthouse, engrossed in an old film, Lily experienced a sensation she hadn't encountered in ages: tranquility. She was free from the anxiety of restless nights, no longer concerned about where her next meal would come from. She was secure. Moreover, she was desired. However, not all aspects were straightforward. Embracing this new existence proved to be more complex than merely coming to terms with it. She continued to experience nightmares, often waking in a state of panic, fearful that it might all have been a mere illusion. And then came the uncertainties, the persistent anxiety that it might all be too perfect to believe. What if Alexander had a change of heart? What if something occurred and she found herself back on the streets? The uncertainty lingered like a shadow, ever present and unsettling. One evening, following a particularly unsettling nightmare, she stood on the balcony, gazing out at the city. The light extended infinitely, a perpetual reminder of the insignificance she had once experienced in this expansive universe. She was unaware of Alexander's presence until he was right beside her. Struggling to find rest? he inquired softly. She gave a slight shake of her head. Lost in thought, he nodded, conveying an air of comprehension. There's a great deal to absorb. Lily paused, contemplating her words before finally breaking the silence. I find myself in a constant state of anticipation for its vanishing. To have everything stripped away. Alexander pivoted to meet her gaze. That's simply not in the cards, Lily. You are my daughter. This is your place. She yearned to trust him. Above all else, she yearned to believe that this was genuine. However, years of fending for herself had instilled in her the lesson of self-reliance. I'm not sure how to approach this, she confessed. I struggle to find a way to simply exist like everyone else. Alexander let out a gentle sigh, his face reflecting a tender emotion. Be true to yourself. There's no need to pretend to be someone else. You have experienced challenges that surpass what many will ever encounter. Patience is key, and that's perfectly fine. I'm here to stay. His words found a place within her, bringing a sense of calm. For the first time, she allowed herself to think that perhaps, just perhaps, she had truly discovered a place where she fit in. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Lily was beginning to find her footing in her new life. However, the shift proved to be more challenging than she had anticipated. Even with Alexander's warmth, the shadows of her history lingered, hindering her ability to wholeheartedly accept this unexpected transformation. Late at night, she frequently roamed the penthouse, gazing out at the New York City skyline, contemplating her true place in this vibrant world. The opulence enveloping her seemed surreal, as if she were inhabiting a life that belonged to another. She had never experienced the comfort of soft beds, the satisfaction of warm meals, or the presence of people who genuinely cared for her well-being. It felt like an overwhelming reality to confront. On the other hand, Alexander was exerting every effort to ensure she felt at home. He transformed from a formidable, straightforward entrepreneur into a man seeking to forge a bond with a daughter he had never realized existed. He endeavored to remain patient, allowing her the necessary space while ensuring she understood his unwavering support. Yet, Lily could perceive it in his gaze. He was terrified of losing her before he had the chance to truly understand her. One afternoon, Alexander brought her to a quaint cafe in Brooklyn, a spot he frequented during his youth. It may not have been the upscale dining experience he had grown accustomed to, yet it was evident that the establishment carried a deep emotional significance for him. As they lingered by the window, coffee cups in hand, Lily caught a fleeting glimpse of the man Alexander once was, long before the riches and the influence took hold. He shared tales from his youth, recounting how he had lived in a small apartment with his mother, facing the challenges of making ends meet. He recounted the nights spent in contemplation, pondering whether he would ever break free from the relentless cycle of poverty, and how he had labored diligently to construct his business from the very foundation. Lily absorbed every word, astonished by the depth of her connection to his challenges. She had devoted her whole existence to the conviction that she was solitary, that no one could truly grasp the essence of abandonment, the struggle for survival. Yet, here stood a man who had once mirrored her own existence. What set him apart was that he had discovered an escape. And now, for reasons she still couldn't quite grasp, he was extending to her the same opportunity. That evening, in the penthouse, Lily settled onto the couch, leafing through a vintage photo album that Alexander had gifted her. It was brimming with images of him in his youth, standing proudly before the first office he had ever leased, posing alongside his mother in their modest apartment, and attending business meetings while he was still striving to establish his identity. Observing him in that moment, prior to the riches and the achievements, illuminated for her that he wasn't as dissimilar from her as she had previously believed. Yet, just as she started to lower her defenses, the harshness of reality surged back in. The following morning, an unexpected call came through from an old acquaintance, Jake, one of the boys she used to spend time with during her days on the streets. Jake had always been a source of chaos, yet he was also among the rare individuals who had shown her kindness when others turned away. The sound of his voice unleashed a torrent of memories, momentarily drawing her back into the life she once knew. Jake found himself in a predicament. He found himself entangled with the wrong crowd, and now he was in urgent need of cash. "Lily, please," he implored through the phone. "If there were any other option, I wouldn't be asking. These individuals, they mean business. If I fail to repay them, I'm uncertain about the consequences that await me." Lily was caught in a conflict of emotions. One part of her yearned to turn away, to abandon that existence and concentrate on what lay ahead. Yet, a different part of her couldn't overlook how Jake had stood by her side during her loneliest moments. She hesitated to abandon him. But how could she possibly seek assistance from Alexander? She had only just started to gain his confidence. Requesting financial assistance from someone like Jake would likely lead him to doubt her intentions and wonder if she was exploiting him. That evening, she found herself in her room, fixated on the phone, weighing her options. She might attempt to seek out the funds independently, yet she lacked a genuine means of acquiring them. Only Alexander possessed the resources to provide assistance. But what if he declined? What if he perceived her merely as another individual seeking to exploit his riches? Rest eluded her throughout the night, and by dawn, she realized it was time to reveal the truth to Alexander. As she sat down for breakfast, a moment of hesitation lingered before she finally found her words. She spoke with caution. "I need to ask you something." Alexander placed his coffee aside, his gaze fixed on her with a hint of worry. "Absolutely. What is it exactly?" Lily inhaled deeply. "It concerns an individual from my history. He goes by the name Jake. During my time on the streets, we always had each other's backs. He finds himself in a predicament and requires assistance." Alexander's face was a mask of inscrutability. "What sort of trouble?" Lily paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "He is in debt to some perilous individuals. He claims they'll pursue him if he fails to make the payment." Alexander let out a weary sigh, his fingers pressing against his temples. "Lily, I see that your loyalty to him runs deep. However, engaging in circumstances like this is not advisable. Providing him with funds won't resolve the issue if he is in debt to perilous individuals. It could potentially exacerbate the situation." Lily's fists tightened, a wave of frustration surging within her. "I simply can't abandon him. He was there for me when I felt utterly alone." Alexander studied her intently. "What occurs if you provide him with funds and he finds himself in trouble once more? Are you going to continue rescuing him?" Lily became quiet. That hadn't crossed her mind. Alexander extended his hand over the table, his tone gentle and subdued. "I appreciate your willingness to assist, but there are alternative approaches to consider. I'll reach out to a few individuals and explore if there's a more secure option available. However, providing him with money won't resolve the issue." Lily felt the urge to dispute, yet beneath the surface, she recognized the truth in his words. Jake had a knack for being reckless, constantly discovering new avenues to land himself in trouble. She loathed the thought of leaving him behind, yet she was unwilling to jeopardize all that she had just begun to create. As night fell, she found herself on the balcony, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape. Her mind wandered to Jake, to the echoes of her past, to the life she had just managed to leave behind. She felt uncertain about the correct answer, yet it was evident that she could no longer straddle the line between the past and the future. She faced a decision. Amidst the glimmering city lights, she vowed quietly to herself. She refused to allow her history to shape her identity. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could discover a path to progress while still holding on to the individuals who had been significant in her life. Before moving on, kindly subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Lily had devoted the whole night to contemplating Alexander's words. His words reverberated in her thoughts, compelling her to face the reality she had long evaded. She had to let go of her past if she genuinely desired a future. Yet leaving Jake seemed like a betrayal to someone who had once been her soul kin. The morning air in New York was invigorating as she emerged onto the balcony, observing the bustling streets beneath her. The city thrummed with life, a constant pulse of activity, and she understood that to endure, she must also press onward. She reached for her phone and dialed Jake's number. His voice brimmed with urgency, yet she steeled herself to remain resolute. She explained to him that she was unable to provide the money, emphasizing her efforts to create something new for herself. He remained quiet for a considerable time before he finally whispered, "I suppose I should have seen that coming. You've joined their ranks." The connection was lost, and a wave of despair washed over Lily. She attempted to navigate her day as she normally would, yet the burden of guilt loomed heavily over her. Alexander observed her subdued demeanor during breakfast and chose not to press her for conversation, yet his gaze conveyed an understanding of her unspoken thoughts. Rather than addressing the issue directly, he proposed they escape the city for a drive. "I have something to share with you," he said. Lily paused for a moment, but ultimately gave her consent. They left Manhattan behind, cruising through the suburbs and making their way to a more tranquil area of New York, Westchester County. As they distanced themselves from the imposing skyscrapers, a sense of liberation washed over Lily. Alexander finally arrived at a large, well-kept building, where a sign proclaimed, "Horizon Youth Center." Lily's brow furrowed in perplexity as he guided her through the door. As soon as they stepped inside, clarity washed over her. The center buzzed with the energy of kids and teenagers, some huddled in small groups, while others engaged in a lively game of basketball in the courtyard. It served as a refuge for children who found themselves without options, reminiscent of her own past. A woman with gentle eyes and a welcoming smile came closer to them. "It's been a while, Alexander," she said, before shifting her attention to Lily. "You must be Lily, then. He has shared quite a bit about you with me." Lily was stunned. "You manage this place?" she inquired, casting a glance at Alexander. He gave a slight nod. "I began supporting it many years back. It's for children who require assistance, children like you and Jake. I wanted you to recognize that there are various approaches to assist others beyond merely giving them cash." Lily strolled through the heart of the area, absorbing every detail around her. She observed children giggling, conversing, and discovering. She discovered a realm she had never realized was there, a setting where individuals genuinely valued children like her. As she observed, a thought suddenly came to her mind. Perhaps she couldn't rescue Jake in the way he desired, but that didn't imply she couldn't create an impact. As they made their way back to the city, Lily found herself deep in contemplation. Alexander allowed her the space she needed, patiently waiting for her to sort through her thoughts. That evening, she resolved to take a different path. She reached out to Jake once more. His voice was icy when he responded. "What is it that you seek?" he inquired. "I cannot provide you with any funds," she stated with conviction. "However, I can assist you if you are open to it." She shared with him details about the center, explaining how they could assist him in leaving the streets behind and discovering a genuine future. A prolonged hush enveloped the space. Then Jake let out a harsh, mirthless laugh. "Do you really believe that a charity is going to solve this issue? These individuals show no concern for us, Lily." She maintained that they do. "I care as well. However, I cannot assist you if you are not willing to take the first step for yourself." He whispered a few words to himself before ending the call. Lily sat there, gazing at the phone, filled with uncertainty about whether she had made the right choice. Yet, beneath the surface, she understood the importance of allowing him to navigate his own path, just as she was compelled to forge her own. The upcoming weeks unfolded uniquely for Lily. She began dedicating more of her time to the youth center, connecting with the kids and offering assistance wherever possible. Though it was a challenge, she finally sensed a connection to something greater than her own existence. As dusk settled and she was departing the center, a recognizable silhouette caught her eye, casually leaning against the fence. "Jake." He appeared weathered, his attire frayed and his expression weary. Yet, there was an unmistakable change in his gaze. He confessed uncertainty about whether this place could assist him. "However, I find myself without any other options." Lily experienced a tightness in her throat. "Let's discover the truth," she said, guiding him through the door. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, like our content, and share it with your friends. Lily had never imagined that her life could transform so completely in such a short span of time. The streets of New York had always been her arena, a realm where she honed her skills to endure with nothing but unwavering resolve. As she stood before the Horizon Youth Center, an unfamiliar sense of purpose washed over her. The children here echoed her own past, wandering, seeking, yearning for an escape. Jake had been at the center for a few weeks, and while he remained doubtful, she could perceive the transformation within him. The fury in his gaze had faded, giving way to an emotion that mirrored hope. Letting go of his old ways proved to be a challenge, yet he was making an effort. Alexander had always understood that true assistance went beyond mere financial support. It was about illuminating the path to a brighter future for someone. One evening, while Lily was assisting one of the younger kids with their homework, Jake approached her. He appeared uncertain, as if he had thoughts swirling in his mind but struggled to find the right words to express them. "I got a job," he finally said, shoving his hands into his pockets. Lily's eyes grew large with astonishment. "Oh, really?" He gave a slight nod. "Sure, it's just at a diner washing dishes, but it's a start." A smile blossomed on Lily's face, unstoppable and radiant. She understood the significance of this moment for him. "That's incredible, Jake," she remarked. "Your achievements fill me with pride." He averted his gaze, a hint of embarrassment crossing his features, yet she sensed that her words resonated with him. That evening, she perched on the balcony of Alexander's penthouse, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape. It felt peculiar to reflect on the extent of transformation that had occurred. She transformed her life from nights spent on the streets to finding a home, securing a job, and surrounding herself with individuals who truly cared for her well-being. Alexander had bestowed upon her a life she had never imagined possible, and now she was dedicating it to the service of others. Yet, an unresolved matter lingered in the air. She had never inquired of Alexander the reason behind his keen interest in her, nor why he had made an effort to assist a girl he had scarcely known. The thought lingered in her mind for weeks, yet she hesitated to voice it. The following morning, she discovered him in his study, meticulously reviewing some paperwork. With a deep breath, she entered and settled into the chair opposite him. "May I pose a question to you?" He lifted his gaze from his task, offering a nod. "Absolutely." She paused, weighing her words carefully before finally breaking the silence. "What motivated you to assist me?" "Please, I truly need assistance." Many individuals likely wouldn't have taken the time. Alexander set his pen aside and reclined in his chair, observing her intently for a moment. "It was because I recognized your true self," he finally admitted. Lily's brow furrowed in perplexity. "Could you clarify what you mean?" He let out a deep breath, weighing his words carefully before speaking. "I was acquainted with your mother." Lily sensed her heart freeze in that moment. "Excuse me?" Alexander gave a slight nod. "Once upon a time, before I found myself in this position," he indicated the opulent surroundings of the office, "I was merely a determined entrepreneur striving to succeed in this bustling city. Emily, your mother, was the sole individual who had faith in me. She was there for me during my darkest times. We shared a bond, yet life led us down separate paths. It was only recently that I discovered she had a daughter." Lily felt as though her mind was in a whirlwind. Her mother had always kept her past a secret, and now, standing before her was Alexander, claiming he had known her. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He expressed that he wanted you to place your trust in him on your own terms. I never intended for you to feel any sense of obligation towards me." Lily sensed the sharpness of tears welling in her eyes. She had devoted so much time to the belief that she was isolated, that no one had ever shown concern for her or her mother. Yet throughout this entire time, Alexander had kept a watchful eye on her, not out of obligation, but because he had once cherished her mother. It was an avalanche of emotions. "I'm at a loss for words," she confessed. He offered a gentle smile. "No need for words. Remember, Lily, you are not alone. You were never that." For the very first time, she genuinely embraced the truth of it. She had transformed from an overlooked street child into someone remarkable. She possessed a home, a future, and a family, even if it wasn't the one she had envisioned. In the coming weeks, she immersed herself in her role at the youth center, guiding young individuals like herself toward their own opportunities for redemption. Jake was improving as well, and while he still had a considerable journey ahead, she recognized that he was finally heading in the right direction. As the evening settled in and she prepared to close the center, Jake approached her, his expression grave and intent. He mentioned that he had been pondering. Perhaps it's time for me to depart from the city, begin anew in a different place. Lily experienced a sharp ache in her heart, yet she understood he was correct. New York had served as their battleground, yet it need not become their confinement. "Where will you go?" she inquired. He gave a slight shrug. "I'm still contemplating. However, I am eager to explore what other possibilities exist." She nodded, struggling to hold back her tears. "I believe that's an excellent notion." On the eve of his departure, they found themselves perched on the rooftop of the youth center, gazing at the sprawling skyline. "We did it, didn't we?" Jake remarked. Lily beamed with joy. "Indeed, we accomplished that." As she observed him depart the following morning, a peculiar blend of sorrow and optimism washed over her. Their journey was arduous, yet they emerged resilient, and that was everything that counted. Upon her return to the youth center, a singular truth resonated within her. This was her rightful place.